This is the Financially Simple Podcast, a show dedicated to destroying the complexities of money for today's small business owner. And now, here's your host, pizza-loving, certified financial planner, Justin Goodbread.
Welcome to Financially Simple. This is a finance show for small business owners about money, how it works in our business and our personal lives, and how we can build wealth to be financially independent. I'm your host, Justin Goodbread, and today is episode number 39. Today is an adventure for me. It's an adventure, in fact. This is one of our very first episodes where we're interviewing an expert. And I've mentioned Chris Snider before in the past, and it's my delight to bring Chris Snider onto the show. I have to warn you that our audio is a little different. We recorded over the internet. So take a seat back and enjoy this interview with my dear friend, Chris Snider. Hey guys, it's Justin Goodbread here with Financially Simple, and we have a first on the show today, Chris Snider. Now that name should be familiar to you. You may have heard me mention Chris several times during the first 40 episodes. Chris is the author. I'm going to hold this book up here. We're going to talk about this book, Walking to Destiny. This is a cool book. I've read this. I've actually read it now 3 times through, Chris. Good work here. We're going to dig into this a little bit today. Thank you for coming on the show with me today, man.
I'm delighted to be here, and thanks for showing everybody about my book. I know you're a big fan of the book, and we kicked off our first SEPA program for 2018, and I said to somebody today that came up to me at lunch, it's a delight when people come up as the author, and people are coming up and saying they've really gotten a lot of value out of the book. That means a lot.
That's awesome. So let me introduce you a little bit, Chris, so everybody kind of knows a little bit more than this informal person that I've mentioned several times, and now they're hearing your voice, or maybe watch you on YouTube. So Chris is a speaker. I first met Chris at the Exit Planning Institute, and he's a speaker. He speaks all around the country. He's also obviously an author. He has a cool blog, Snider Value Index, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
I want to check it out. Now, here's a cool one that I just learned. Chris received the Thought Leader of the Year award from the AM and AA. Tell me who that is and what's that about, Chris?
That's the Alliance of Mergers and Acquisitions Advisors. And they represent probably somewhere between 1,000 and 1,200 investment bankers, private equity firms, people who work in the M&A space, mergers and acquisitions space. And that is a really cool award because, I really live in the exit planning space,
right,
which is well before the actual exit. And so I think it's a testimonial from the M&A community that the work we're doing to get these businesses ready is also going to benefit them. And really what Mike Knoll, who's the president of that organization, I have been trying to do is get the groups working collaboratively more often.
Cool. And you're the CEO of Aspire Management. Tell me what Aspire Management is and what do you do there?
So I think, as you know, I'd really sort of define myself as a business owner today more than anything else. And Aspire Management was my first company that I started back in 2006. And the idea of Aspire Management was I created a methodology called Buy, Improve, Grow, Sell. The idea was to look at growth holistically as an owner or as a CEO. And I initially started Aspire to be a holding company because I wanted to go out and buy, improve, and grow and sell my own businesses. But anybody who started a business knows when there's no cash coming in, and somebody calls and says, hey, I've got a little bit of work for you, you're typically going to look into it. What happened is when people heard I was on the street and out of the corporate world and on my own, got a lot of phone calls. And within about 6 months, I didn't have to buy a business. I had a business already. Right. So Aspire Management actually became a growth and exit transitions company. And that still exists today. I don't do the same amount of client work I used to do because I've got other businesses I own now. Right. But I think I'll always have some legacy clients and I'll always be involved because I like being in the trenches.
But your main focus right now is Exit Planning Institute. Is that correct?
Yeah, Exit Planning Institute has really taken off. My first class 5 years ago had 12 people in it, and this week's class has 70 people in it. 5 years ago, we were doing 2 classes a year. This year, we're going to do 5 or 6.
Chris, why is that? Why are you seeing the big increase? What's going on in the exit planning world that makes that so unique? Or that I just asked 4 questions at once, and I'm sorry, but you see where I'm headed with that.
Well, I think, first of all, there's a few trends that I've seen that driving the marketplace. One is some of the bigger players are starting to move into the market space. Companies like Pac Life, UBS, BNY Mellon, some of the bigger banks, Bank of America. So they're starting to move into the space. Now, why are they moving into? They're moving into the space because baby boomers, the first baby boomers who own 2/3 of the privately held businesses, have now reached the age of 70 plus.
Right.
They're aged 54 to 72. They own 2/3 of the privately held businesses. They represent around $10 trillion of wealth. And even though boomers, who are the inventors of the 60-hour work week, define themselves in a lot of ways by their work, they're not done, but they're ready to move on to something else, especially when they get to 72. So they're holding on to their businesses a little bit longer. And rather than transitioning them in their early 60s, many of them are not transitioning until they hit their early 70s. So I think we're in for about a 10 to 20 year run here on a significant number of businesses that are coming to market or potentially could come to market.
So how does Exit Planning Institute meet that need of that many people, that many trillions of dollars of money's coming in? How do those two coincide and mesh?
So when my son, Scott, and I purchased EPI 5 years ago from Peter Chrisman and Rich Jacob, I was a practitioner within EPI for 4 years before I actually bought the company.
Okay.
But what we're trying to do is our first focus was really on business advisors, because the messaging and the definition of what exit planning is was not something that owners were interested in 5 years ago, frankly. Owners don't want to buy plans. They want to buy action. They want to get things done. And they want to buy value. You know, I want to grow my value. I want to grow my business. And kind of what I've tried to do in the marketplace is show business owners and business advisors that exit planning is nothing more than good business strategy. It's the same thing. So if we build strong, valuable businesses that are transferable, we're going to also build businesses that will grow and produce more sales and income today. You can have both things. And so we really wanted to wrap around and really change the training of these business advisors so they act more like business advisors rather than technical advisors, because that's really what business owners want.
So right now with the Exit Planning Institute, you have all sorts of pedigrees, if you will, coming into the Institute. I came in as a certified financial planner, someone who works with small business owners. But in my class, we had attorneys who worked with ESOPs. We had investment bankers. We had mergers and acquisitions experts, CPAs. We had all sorts of, we even had in our class KPI in person, someone who dealt with technologies. Are you seeing any individual group of people coming through the Institute more than any others, or is it still a smattering across the board?
One of the things that makes EPI unique is that it's a cross-functional organization. So most of the other advisory organizations that you look at, whether it's ACG, AMNAA, NACFA, CVA, they're all organized around a particular function or a particular discipline. What makes EPI unique is that we're cross-functional. So we have a bit of those advisors. So we have this week, I think we have 8 to 10 different types of disciplines. We have 27 states represented. We have 4 countries represented.
Wow.
So what happens is in the real world, when you go to work with a business owner, or from the business owner's eyes, when they're looking out at the advisory community, it really takes a whole group of different people to do value growth and to do exit planning right. And so what we're trying to do is provide a common language and a common framework that both owners understand and that advisors understand to get everybody working on the same page, because it's a team sport.
So in the podcast, I know you haven't been privileged to all the various episodes that have been recorded prior to this, and this is a take my word on it type thing. I've highlighted, your key players on the exit plan itself is going to be your attorney, and they're going to play a vital part in that. You're going to have a CPA. You're going to have a SEPA in there, probably acting as a quarterback. You're going to have more than likely a financial planner of some sort on the personal level. And then you're going to have a couple of, I call them special teams. I put the analogy up like a football game, right? A lot of these I recorded while my Bulldogs were going to the national championship and ultimately got their butts handed to them, right?
Unfortunately.
Right? Go Dogs. Anyways, whenever you're building this team, and I've got business owners who are listening to this, we have other professionals who are listening to this, who do you see as the primary players on an exit plan? And let's take it back to not actually, hey, I'm ready to sell the business, but let's take it back to where you started, which is I'm going to think about selling my business.
The key ones are the attorney, the wealth manager, the CPA. You might also have someone from your peer group, because peer groups such as Vistage, EO, YPO, those have become very significant. Maybe your spouse or someone else from your family. Like for me, it would be my son. I would want on that team. So that's really what we would call the core team. But then you have the extended team, which is really any type of advisor that's going to help you improve the value of your business. So you're going to have functional specialists, like maybe some marketing specialists or IT people, or maybe somebody that knows shop floor control or distribution. And then you're going to have other people like insurance and banking that could come into play as well. And then the third group that you're going to have is your board of advisors, your peer group, your other family members. And so when you think about it, the way we draw it is if you have the owner at the center and then you draw these circles around the owner, it's a pretty extensive football team, as you talk about. One of the things that we ask CEPAs to do when they first come in fact, this morning when I kicked off, I said to them, one of your big decisions is to figure out what role you want to play in the ecosystem. Are you going to be the quarterback, which is like the right-hand man or woman to the business owner? That's sort of like the project manager that's managing all these resources, because owners don't have time to manage all these resources. But they want someone they can trust, someone that understands the big picture to do that for them. Or are you going to be a role player? Say, I'm going to be a wealth manager. That's what I'm going to do. And so part of what the CEPA has to do is figure out what role they want to play and then move into that particular role.
So that's interesting to me, and I'm going to pull it way back because you've made a couple of comments, and I want to bring way back to the beginning and catch something up that I dropped through. You've got a business owner who says, hey, Chris, I want to retire sometime, right? I want to sell my business. Obviously, I may have an idea what it's worth. I may not know what it's worth. When does exit planning actually begin? And who should their first 2 or 3 contact points be to help build that team?
I'm so glad you asked that question. I think the biggest thing that we've done in the industry, EPI I'm saying, is that we have redefined what exit planning is. We call that changing the paradigm. Because if you look back, I developed a methodology called the value acceleration process. And I describe that methodology in detail in my book. If the owners want to get to that level of detail, I go from high level down into the real nitty gritty detail if they want to do that. The process has 3 gates: discover, prepare, and decide. And I can get into what a gating process is, but they can read about that. The real key is that most historically exit planning has been defined really by the 3rd gate, decide. All the focus is on the end. Like, what do I do at the end? And the biggest shift that owners have to make is that exit planning is present tense. It's what you do in your business every day that creates a successful business and a successful exit. So what we've done through the methodology is we back the whole process up into what we call discovery or identify, which is the first of the 5 stages of value maturity. Really, the first step is to identify what you already have by conducting a personal financial business assessment and then correlating that to the range of value in your industry. Once you know that, you're going to understand your profit gap, your value gap, and you're going to understand not only what your business is worth today, but what it potentially could be worth if you were to pursue improvements in both personal, financial, and business. And so I think that's the biggest shift that we've made in the market is exit planning really starts today. It starts right now. And that's what tees you up for a successful growth and a successful exit. There's really no difference.
I have 2 roads I want to walk down here. So I'm going to go first to a question that I want to answer fully here. Then I want to come back to that value gap, because I heard that first in a book and then it was reconfirmed at the class. But let's say that a business owner is thinking in those terms. Hey, look, I don't really have a clue about what my business is worth or what it could be worth, but I'm aging, or, like me, I've sold 3 businesses so far. I just got tired of them. I want to do something that fulfilling. It's not necessarily age. And they're saying, Chris, I hear what you're saying, but who do I call?
Yeah.
Who is the first person they reach out to help explain these gates, as you talked about, or these gaps, or help clarify the smoke? Who's that first person they look at?
Well, ideally, you want to call a CEPA, a Certified Exit Planning Advisor, okay? They're the ones that have been trained on this holistic process, and they understand the big picture. And I can't tell you, I speak to trade groups all the time, and I get the owners coming up and asking me that very question. They say, I don't know who to call. and I say, okay, what's your name? What city are you in? And I'm going to connect you up with a SEPA. And that SEPA could be a financial advisor. It could be a CPA. It could be an attorney. But that person is not only going to know their trade, but they're going to understand the big picture. And they're most likely going to be a collaborator, meaning they're going to have the relationship set up. If you don't know the SEPA, you can always go to the EPI website and you can look up to see if there's a SEPA in your area, or just call our office. Next to that, I'd say, who's your most trusted advisor? Talk to that person. Hopefully that person is a SEPA. But if they're not, you can at least start with that person. But I would highly recommend that the owners look for the SEPA designation and search out a SEPA in their area.
In the show notes, I will put a link to that directory. So if they want to look for SEPAs somewhere in their area, we'll just put a link in there that they can go straight to what Chris is talking about here.
Yeah.
But Chris, let's back up a little bit. As you know, I'm a certified financial planner. I work mostly with small business owners under the 5 million, but I'm starting to work a lot with the $15 and $20 million revenue clients, but small business owners nonetheless, that you and I would say. And the thing that I hear consistently from them is, Justin, how much is my business worth and how much do I need?
Yeah.
Is that what you're referring to as the value gap?
No, the way I define the value gap is your company's current value, if it has any, versus what the best in class company's value are if you at the same level of sales that you're at. So let me take a minute and explain here. So every industry trades in a range of value. The owners can't control that. Private capital market controls that. But the owners can determine where they place in that range. Based on the strength, mostly 80% of that's going to be tied to their intangible assets, what I call the 4 C's in my book.
Right.
And what we want to do is find out where they are in the range, but then we can look at the benchmark, what the best in class companies are doing in their industry and what they're trading for and what their EBITDA as a percent of sales is compared to our clients. And the difference between the best in class companies' bottom line performance times the best multiple versus your current position is what I call the value gap. It's oftentimes can be 200 to 300% more than what the current owner's value is. And it becomes an aha moment for the owner because they realize their first decision is, can I get enough of what I need right now based on what my current value is? And do I want to go after this additional value, or do I want to just get out of the business now?
So let's dig into the weeds a little bit here, buddy. Let's put some numbers on this. As an example, tell me if I heard what you said correctly. So if I can package this the way I think in my financially simple mind, right? Remember, I'm an old country boy, buddy. We got to talk slow here, right? Not from the big city, right? No. So let's say that my business, we go through an assessment and it's currently worth $1 million. Let's say it's assessed at $1 million.
Yeah.
But some of my peers, you said the best in class was the term you used.
Yes.
The best in class is worth $3 million.
Yeah.
So would the value gap be that $2 million difference between my current value of $1 million and my proposed best in class value of $3 million?
Yes, that's the value gap.
Okay. And one of the things that we've really nailed down in the podcast is that for me, and you've seen this, I'm sure in your personal world, a lot of times our business, or for business owners, a lot of time our net worth is comprised mostly of our business. Is that correct?
Yeah, general accepted rule of thumb is 80 to 90% of an owner's wealth is tied up in their business, or what I call locked in the business.
So if I heard that and I heard what you said about value gap, then it's possible that my $1 million net worth, with a little bit of work, a little bit of exit planning, could be moved from $1 million to a best-in-class business?
It's a lot of work. I don't want people to think it's a little bit of work. It's a lot of work to get from $1 million to $3 million. My feeling is it's the owner's choice. They should be presented with that choice. Right. And, there's times where owners will go and say, 1 million's good. If I can get $1 million, I'm good to go. I've had cases like that. And then I found owners get re-energized because they go, well, heck, I don't want to leave $2 million on the table. What do I have to do to get there? The beauty is with the value acceleration system, we can tell them exactly what they have to do to get there because we've evaluated them on 151 different value factors, and all those things that are showing up as weak or, average, if we work on those things and we raise our score, we raise the value. Now, executing and getting those things done is a whole nother story, because it's not easy work, but it can be done.
What is the one roadblock that you see business owners face more than anything? You've been dealing with this for some time. You personally have watched this on some big businesses. How would you say to overcome that?
They have the wrong impression of what exit planning is. In their mind, when you talk to owners about exit planning, they think the end. And what we have to do is they have to reframe the way they view it. It's a business strategy. Exit planning is really nothing more than a strategic business tool that will help you drive more sales and income today while positioning you to harvest that wealth at some point in the future. And so really, it's the first hurdle they have to get over is the way they view it. They can't look at exit planning as something that they do down the road. They have to integrate it into the way they run their business every day. Unless they do that, it's always going to be this special project they never have time to do.
Very well said. Very well said. So that's going to probably answer my last big question I have for you, but I want to see if we can flesh it out a little bit better. And that is, okay, Chris, I get the fact of exit planning is over a length of time. I get the fact that a lot of my net worth's in my business. Mm-hmm. I get the fact that we're dealing with an aging population. Mm-hmm. Is there anything else that we can add that would say why exit planning is so important?
Yeah, the other concept I think that's important is, I talk about in my books, the concept of the 4 C's, the 4 intangible capitals: human capital, customer capital, structural capital, and social capital. And I usually get a lot of big eyes when I talk to the owners and take them through these exercises. Owners need to realize that 80% of their value is tied to intangible assets, not tangible assets. And their accounting systems are built to give them feedback on the tax number, right, which is a written down assets. Right. And they're not getting any regular feedback on the real number, which is where 80% of their business lies. And so that's why we created value acceleration. And I think that understanding that concept allows them to focus on things that can raise the intangible value of those assets, the intangible capitals, and thus raise them up into the range of value.
So whenever I first came to the Exit Planning Institute some years ago now, I heard those 4 C's. And actually, I read it in your book prior to coming to the class. I never heard of put it in that way. I've heard it mentioned other ways, but never the 4 C's. Can you tell me what each of those C's are just briefly and what they mean?
So human, customer, structural, and social. So human is the measure of the talent within the company. So if you just think, all things being equal, a company that has more talent is going to be a more valuable company than a company that has weak talent. Right. The other thing is they all drive owner independence. So if you have an owner independent business collecting mail money and not having to show up every day, it's probably because you have strong human capital. Customer capital is the strength of your relationships with your customer. Structural capital is all your back office systems, your processes, your financial structure. And social is really your culture and the rhythm of the business, your inward facing rhythm and outward facing rhythm to your community.
One last question for you. So this exit planning book here that I'm holding up, I think I had 60 copies, and I've just given them all out because I think it's extremely valuable. Where can folks get a copy of this?
There's 3 places they can get it. They can go to our website, www.exit-planning-institute.org, okay, or they can go to www.snidervalueindex.com, or they can go on Amazon and just search for Walking to Destiny. You'll find it there.
Well, perfect, Chris. Hey, man, I appreciate you coming in today. Like I said, first interview for the Financially Simple podcast, and I couldn't think of a better person to bring on the show. You've answered some questions I know today that we're going to get, and, man, I'm excited about this. As you can tell, I'm ready to see small business owners of all different shapes, sizes, backgrounds, wherever, just have a blast in business. You know, so many people get tired of business. I'm ready for that, so I appreciate you coming on. Any last words you want to say before we hop off?
Change the outcome.
There you go, brother. Well, thank you so much, man.
You have been listening to the Financially Simple podcast. The information in this show is for informational purposes only. This show is not investment advice. Instead, seek help from a competent financial advisor. Justin Goodbread, CFP, is an investment advisor representative of Heritage Investors, a registered investment advisor.